Yao bit his lip, trying to formulate an excuse, but before he could speak, Kojo's phone buzzed. He felt his heart pound harder as his eyes scanned the message. What the hell? Kojo muttered under his breath. His voice was shaking. This can't be right. Effie. Kojo blinked, his heart beginning to pound as he reread the notification. Every cedi in his account gone. The bank message showed a series of transfers he didn't recognize, all leading to an account he didn't know. His mind raced. Then he stopped on one chilling realization. Efe had his bank details. Yao, something is wrong. Kojo's voice shook as he looked up, shock in his eyes. But Yao's expression only grew tense. Avoiding Kojo's gaze, Yao Ziggy stammered, maybe it's a mistake, Charlie. Banks mess up sometimes. Yao, Kojo said quietly, his voice laced with controlled anger. Did you know about this? Yao's forced smile faded, guilt flashing across his face. He looked away, his silence damning. Kojo Boateng's entire world felt like it was spinning. His breathing became shallow, his thoughts racing. The woman he loved, the woman he'd sacrificed so much for, was gone. And Yao Ziggy, the friend he'd known since childhood, had betrayed him. He couldn't believe that his kindness, his trust, had been turned against him like this. Yao, Kojo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Get out. Kojo, come on, Yao started. I said, get out. Kojo shouted, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. You've used me, both of you, just leave. Yao's face tightened, but he didn't argue. Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving Kojo alone in the silent apartment. Kojo Boateng sat alone in his now empty apartment, staring at the eviction notice he could do nothing about. Efe had vanished with everything, and he no longer had the funds to cover rent. His once stable life had been stripped away overnight. The weight of betrayal and heartbreak was almost too much to bear. He thought of calling family, but realized this was a burden he would carry alone. Just days after discovering that Efe had emptied his bank account, Kojo arrived at work, exhausted and distracted. He barely slept, his mind plagued by the betrayal, and the financial weight pressing down on him was unbearable. But as he entered the sleek offices of his company, he took a deep breath, determined to keep his personal struggles hidden from his colleagues. That morning, he was called into his manager's office. His boss, a composed man with graying hair and a firm expression, was waiting for him with a serious look. Kojo Boateng, please have a seat. His manager began, his tone unusually formal. Kojo sensed something was wrong, a sense of dread knotting in his stomach. Due to recent financial constraints, the company is undergoing restructuring, his boss explained. Unfortunately, we are letting some positions go, including yours. This isn't a reflection on your performance, Kojo. Your work has always been excellent. This is purely a financial decision. Kojo sat frozen, his mind struggling to process the words. His job was the last source of stability, and now it was being taken from him, just as his world was falling apart. Please understand, his boss added, a hint of sympathy in his voice. This wasn't an easy decision. We will provide a small severance package, but I'm afraid this is final. Kojo Boateng left the office that day feeling numb, walking the streets of Accra in a daze. His steady, well-paying job, the life he had built, and the reputation he had worked so hard to establish, all gone. As he wandered through the busy streets, his mind raced with panic and disbelief. He had nothing left. With no job and no savings, Kojo's life quickly unraveled. Rent was due, bills were piling up, and he had no steady income. Desperation pushed him to take any work he could find. He started with odd jobs like helping vendors at the local Makula markets, moving goods from stalls, and even helping with sales. He sold phones at local markets by day, drove for a ride-hailing service by night, and sometimes took odd jobs just to survive. All these jobs were far from the office environment he was used to. but he did it without complaint, knowing he had no other choice. The hours were long and tiring, leaving him exhausted and struggling to make ends meet. He would start his mornings at the market, then drive through the evening and late into the night, barely managing a few hours of sleep. Each day was a blur of exhaustion, but he held on, fueled by anger and a relentless need to rebuild. One evening, Kojo Boateng picked up a former colleague from his old company. The recognition was immediate, and the colleague looked surprised to see him behind the wheel. "Kojo, is that you?" his colleague asked, astonishment in his voice. "Yes, it's me," Kojo replied, forcing a smile, trying to hide the embarrassment he felt. His colleague hesitated, clearly unsure of what to say. I heard about the layoffs. I'm sorry, Kojo. You didn't deserve this." Kojo Boateng nodded silently, the words hitting him harder than he expected. The conversation reminded him of the life he had lost and the respect he had once commanded. Despite working tirelessly, Kojo's side hustles barely brought in enough income to cover the basics. Most days, he skipped meals to save money, often going to bed on an empty stomach, too tired to think about his growing debts. His once proud demeanor faded, replaced by a look of exhaustion and worry. The endless cycle of work and worry left him physically and mentally drained. Months passed, and Kojo Boateng was still hustling through his life trying to make ends meet. One humid evening in Accra, Kojo had just finished his long shift, driving for a ride-hailing service, feeling exhausted from the day's work. He started counting the few cedis he'd managed to earn that day, planning how he'd stretch it to cover the week's necessities. Just as he was about to leave, a frantic young man approached him near the car park, his face edged with desperation. "Please, brother," the man began, his voice urgent. "I need your help. My sister is sick and I don't have enough money for the hospital bill. Could you spare anything at all, even just a few cedis?" Kojo felt a pang of empathy as he looked into the young man's pleading eyes. Not so long, he would have reached into his wallet without hesitation, eager to ease the suffering of someone in need. But after everything he'd been through, losing his life savings, his job, and enduring countless sleepless nights just to survive, Kojo knew he couldn't afford to give away the little he had. He'd learned the hard way that even the purest kindness could leave him vulnerable. "I'm sorry, I really am," Kojo replied, his voice softer than he'd intended. "But I can't help. I've got my own struggles right now." The young man's face fell, and he nodded, murmuring a disappointed "thank you anyway," before walking away, his figure fading into the crowd. As Kojo watched him go, he felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. His heart was heavy, but he knew he'd made the right decision for his own survival. He had finally set a boundary, learned to protect himself, even if it meant denying help to someone in genuine need. That night, as Kojo drove through the quieter street, his mind kept drifting back to the young man. He couldn't shake the image of those desperate eyes, nor the doubt creeping into his mind. Had he done the right thing? He wondered, what if the man's story had been true? Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a notification, a job offer for a late-night passenger, just a few blocks from where he had spoken to the young man. Kojo hesitated, feeling an odd chill settled over him. He accepted the ride, but couldn't shake the eerie sense that something wasn't right. As he arrived at the pickup location, he saw the same young man from earlier standing there, waving him down. Kojo's heart raced, a knot of tension tightening in his stomach. The man climbed into the back seat, silent and withdrawn. The silence in the car was thick, and Kojo's fingers gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing with questions. Had he made a mistake in refusing him? Was this man really in need, or was there something else he wasn't seeing? What do you think, guys? Watch out for the next episode to find out who this man is and the conversation they had. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave a comment behind. Let me know what you think about this particular one in the comment section. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.